My name is Maya Collins. I am 32 years old. And a few weeks ago, I heard my own father say I was too embarrassing to be seen with my brother's new in-laws. I was standing in the hallway holding a mug of coffee when his voice cut through the air from the living room. "Your brother's in-laws are elite. You'll humiliate us. Do you understand, Maya? Don't ruin this." He said it like I was a problem to be managed, not his daughter. My brother had just gotten engaged to a millionaire heir, the kind of woman you see in glossy travel magazines, and suddenly my messy data analyst life in Denver was a threat to their shiny new image. They did not care that I spend my nights rebuilding hotel revenue models and fixing broken booking systems. To them, I was just the awkward girl who asks too many questions at dinner and never knows what fork to use. So, while they packed suitcases full of designer outfits for a New Year's Eve engagement party at a luxury resort, I was told to stay home and keep things simple. They didn't want me at the party. They didn't want me anywhere near the people they called elite. And they definitely didn't want anyone knowing I was part of the family. What they did not know was that those same elite in-laws had been working with me for months under a different name, trusting my numbers to save their business. And on the night they tried to hide me, those in-laws ended up staring at a framed photo, recognizing my face, and screaming my name in front of everyone. Have you ever been treated like the family embarrassment, only to find out you're the one holding all the power? Stay with me because the way this party flipped from humiliation to payback is something you'll want to hear until the very end. I did not grow up thinking I was embarrassing. As a kid, I just thought I was different. While other kids at our family barbecues ran around the yard, I was the one sitting at the plastic table counting how many burgers people took and wondering why Aunt Patricia always left before dessert. I asked questions that made adults uncomfortable. Why do you invest in that company if their debt is so high? Why do you say we're fine with money if mom works 2 jobs? People laughed, then stopped inviting me into conversations. My parents, Richard and Sandra Collins, would pull me aside afterward. "Maya, can you please just be normal for once? Smile. Talk about school. Don't interrogate people." Meanwhile, my older brother Derek was everything they wanted. He knew exactly when to laugh, when to compliment someone's watch, when to ask about golf. At his high school graduation dinner, I remember standing too close to the waiter, asking about tips and wages, and bumping into a tray of red wine. Crimson splattered all over a guest's cream blazer. The whole table went silent. My mother's face turned the color of that wine. Richard grabbed my arm so hard it hurt and hissed, "This is exactly what I mean. You don't belong in these settings." After that, I stopped trying to fit in at their kind of party. Instead, I buried myself in numbers. In high school, I taught myself spreadsheets for fun. In college, while other people were posting pictures from sorority parties, I was running A/B tests on website layouts for a tiny mountain lodge that couldn't afford a real agency. I studied business analytics and data science, discovering that I could take messy information and turn it into clean answers. Hotels and guest houses started coming to me with the same problem: too many empty rooms, not enough guests. I would sit in my tiny dorm room, staring at charts at 3 a.m, tweaking prices and ad strategies until the graphs finally turned upward. Back home in the suburbs of Denver, though, none of that mattered. When I mentioned landing my first client, my mother smiled politely and said, "So you're still doing that computer thing?" My dad waved it off. "It's just temporary. She'll get a real job eventually." Derek, on the other hand, went straight into finance after college, joined a corporate investment firm, and instantly became the golden boy again. My parents introduced him to everyone as our future partner at a big firm in Chicago, our pride and joy. When I showed up to family dinners in jeans after a 12-hour day consulting for 3 small hotels at once, my mother whispered, "Could you at least pretend you're not working from your bedroom?" At some point, something in me snapped. If they were never going to see my value in the room, I would build it quietly outside the room. I registered my own small consulting business called Collins Analytics and started saying no when my parents tried to drag me to parties where I knew I would be the punchline. I chose data over dinner tables, dashboards over polite small talk, and while they were busy polishing Derek's image, I was slowly learning something they had no idea about. In the right hands, numbers can change the fate of an entire company. The question was, what would happen the day my numbers collided with their obsession over status? The first time Sterling Crown Hotels came into my life, it was because someone else was desperate. I was in my apartment one freezing Denver afternoon, half asleep over a spreadsheet, when an email popped up with the subject line, "Urgent mid-size hotel chain in trouble. Can you help?" A small agency I had freelanced for before was panicking. They had a client whose bookings had crashed after the pandemic, a luxury brand with big marketing budgets and even bigger expectations. They needed someone who could make sense of the mess fast. That client was Sterling Crown Hotels, though at that moment it was just a logo and a name in an attachment. A few hours later, my phone rang. "This is Marcus Sterling," the voice said, measured but frayed at the edges. "We've been told you can pull numbers out of the fire." I sat up a little straighter. "No camera," he added quickly. "Our connection is awful right now. Let's just keep this on audio." That was fine by me. I liked not being seen. Over the next hour, he laid it all out. Their flagship properties were half empty. Competitors were eating their market share, and the last agency had burned through a 7-figure budget with almost nothing to show. "We need someone who actually understands data, not just pretty presentations," he said. "Can you dive into our systems, tell us what's broken, and fix it?" I should have been intimidated, but what I felt was something else entirely. Clarity. This was just a very large version of the same puzzle I had been solving for years. I asked for access to their booking system, ad accounts, website analytics. Within days, I was combing through years of numbers, spotting patterns no one on their team had noticed. Their pricing was static in a market that had become insanely dynamic. Their ads were targeting the wrong demographics in the wrong cities. Their website was bleeding potential guests at the checkout step because the mobile form was a nightmare. So I built a plan. We tested dynamic pricing tied to demand curves, shifting rates by tiny percentages based on seasonality and real-time searches. We shut off half their useless ad campaigns and rerouted the budget into high-intent search traffic and targeted social audiences. I mapped out packages for remote workers, staycation families, people who wanted long weekends within driving distance instead of international trips. It was riskier than the safe reports they were used to seeing, and I told them that. Marcus paused on the phone, then said, "If your numbers are right, we have nothing left to lose. Do it." For the first round of tests, I even put some of my own consulting fee on the line, structuring part of it as performance-based. If I failed, I would make almost nothing. If it worked, both of us would win. The first month, the graphs moved a little. The second month, they bent hard upward. Booking rates climbed, revenue followed, and even the board stopped breathing down Marcus's neck. He called me late one evening, his voice lighter than I had ever heard it. "You have no idea what you've done for us, Maya. Our team is putting together a case study wall at our main resort to celebrate the turnaround. We want your face on it, your name, everything." I laughed and told him I preferred to stay behind the scenes, but I sent over a professional headshot anyway, just in case they insisted. On the internal mock-up they emailed me. My photo sat there in a gold frame with the caption, "Data and Growth Strategist, Maya Collins." I closed the file before I could think too much about it. To me, it was just one more quiet win no one at home needed to know about. What I didn't realize then was that the same revived hotel chain would soon host a glittering charity gala. And at that gala, my polished older brother Derek would meet a woman named Victoria Sterling, the millionaire heir my parents would fall in love with long before they ever accepted me. Derek called me about 3 months after that first big turnaround for Sterling Crown, his voice bright in a way I recognized from every time he thought he was leveling up. "Hey, you free to grab coffee? I have news." We met at a sleek spot downtown, the kind of place with exposed brick walls and overpriced lattes. He walked in wearing a tailored suit, even though it was a Saturday. That easy smile plastered on his face. I could tell before he said a word that whatever he was about to tell me would make our parents very, very proud. He didn't even let me finish my hello. "I'm engaged," he said, dropping the word between us like a trophy. "To Victoria Sterling." The name hit me like a glitch in my brain. "Sterling? As in Sterling Crown Hotels?" I asked carefully. "Yeah," he said, eyes shining. "Her family owns this insane hotel empire. They host charity events and political fundraisers all the time. Dad is freaking out, in a good way." I forced a smile. I had spent months inside that empire's numbers, saving them from collapse. But in Derek's world, I was always 10 steps behind whatever image he was curating. "That's great," I said. "I'm happy for you." We talked for a while about the proposal, about the ring, about how our parents reacted. Of course, they were thrilled. This was the kind of connection they'd always dreamed of, the gilded doorway into the world they admired from magazines and television. It wasn't until Derek finished his story that his expression shifted, as if he'd been saving the uncomfortable part for last. "So, there's a New Year's Eve engagement party," he began, tracing the rim of his cup. "At one of Victoria's family resorts in Scottsdale. It's going to be huge. Her parents are inviting donors, business partners, a couple of politicians. It's a big deal." I nodded, waiting for the part where he asked if I needed help booking flights or choosing a dress. Instead, he cleared his throat. "Look, Maya," he said, and my stomach went cold. "I think it's better if you sit this one out." I stared at him. "Sit it out? It's your engagement party." "It's a very particular crowd," he said slowly. "Victoria's parents, their friends, they're used to a certain environment. You know how you get in those situations." "How I get," I repeated, my voice sharper. He lifted his hands like a shield. "You ask those heavy questions. You make people uncomfortable. You don't really play the game. Dad thinks it might be too stressful for you." "Too stressful for me or too embarrassing for you?" I asked. He winced, which told me everything I needed to know. I wanted to say, "Derek, I work with hotels and resorts for a living. I know more about the kind of people you're trying to impress than you do," but he just kept talking. "We only get one shot at a first impression with Victoria's family. They're elite, Maya. They're used to certain manners, certain optics. Mom and Dad are already nervous. They think it's safer if you don't come." Safer. Like I was some unpredictable storm that might ruin his big night. I laughed, but it came out flat. "So I'm not invited to my own brother's engagement party because I don't fit the optics." He couldn't meet my eyes. "It's not like that," he muttered. "We'll have a smaller family dinner later. Just us. You know I love you, right? You know this is just strategy." When I got home, my parents were in the living room, voices low and urgent. I stopped in the hallway unseen. "Your brother's in-laws are elite," Dad was saying. "We can't risk Maya rambling about money or calling out someone's business model. She'll humiliate us." Sandra sighed. "She doesn't mean to, Richard, but this could be Derek's doorway into something better. We can't let her ruin it." The words landed harder than any physical slap. Upstairs, my laptop was still open on a dashboard from Sterling Crown Hotels, the same logo that would be embossed on the invitations to Derek's New Year's Eve celebration. They were terrified I would embarrass them in front of the very people whose fortunes I'd helped rebuild. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. Fine, I thought. If they want to hide me, let them. They have no idea how small their version of this story really is. New Year's Eve came faster than I wanted it to. The week between Christmas and the 31st felt like limbo, like the world was holding its breath. My parents were buzzing around the house talking about flights and outfits and what gift would be appropriate for the Sterlings. Derek sent me a picture of the invitation once, all gold foil and embossed logos. "Wish you could come," he wrote, as if that decision had not been made very deliberately without me. On the morning of the party, I watched them leave for the airport in their best clothes. My mother in a new dress she absolutely could not afford without putting something on a credit card. My father adjusting a tie he had bought on sale but pretended was designer. They waved and I waved back from the doorway, the forgettable daughter who had been told to stay home for her own good. When the car pulled away, the house went quiet in a way that felt like a weight pressing on my chest. That night, Denver glittered with fireworks and rooftop parties, but I stayed in my apartment with takeout and my laptop open on the coffee table. I tried turning on a movie, but my phone kept lighting up. Photos from my mother of the resort lobby dripping in chandeliers, videos from Derek of champagne towers, a live band, Victoria walking down a grand staircase in a silver gown like she had stepped out of a magazine. In one clip, I could hear my dad in the background telling someone, "That's my son up there. He's marrying into the Sterling family." I stared at the screen until the images blurred. They were inside the world they had always worshipped, and they had done everything possible to make sure I was nowhere near it. So I closed the photos and opened a different window. The analytics dashboard for Sterling Crown's year-end performance. Real-time booking numbers flickered across the screen, rows of data reflecting reservations pouring into the same brand my brother was celebrating with while they smiled for pictures. I watched occupancy rates climb and revenue bars fill in, the lines I had helped bend upward, turning into bonuses and holiday parties for people who would never know my name. An email notification popped up in the corner of my screen. Subject line, year-end update and a special request. It was from Marcus Sterling. I clicked the email open, half expecting a brief thank you and a spreadsheet. Instead, he had written a full paragraph about how transformative the past year had been, how the board had gone from panic to cautious optimism to open excitement. "You didn't just tweak a few ads, Sophie," he wrote. "You changed the way we understand our business. We want to honor that properly." There was an attachment at the bottom of the email labeled Concept Wall of Innovation. When I opened it, my breath caught. It was a mock-up of the entrance to one of their flagship resorts, a long wall lined with framed case studies. Each frame had a photo, a title, a short description of the project. Near the center of the wall was my own headshot, cleaner and more confident than I felt in real life. Beneath it, a plaque that read, Data and Growth Strategist, Sophie Mitchell. The description underneath summarized the turnaround I had led. Dynamic pricing overhaul, demand-driven campaigns, recovery from post-pandemic slump. Guests would walk past this wall on their way into conferences and galas, clinking glasses under chandeliers while my face watched from the middle. "We're planning to unveil this at a major partners and family event next season," Richard continued. "We'd love to finally meet you in person, introduce you to some of the people whose jobs you helped save." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. On my phone, another photo came in from my mother. Jason and Olivia cuddled together under a shower of confetti. My parents blurred in the background, eyes shining. I imagined that somewhere, not far from where they were posing, that wall might eventually exist. My framed photo silently contradicting every story they'd told about me being a disappointment. I replied to Richard with a simple professional yes. Told him I'd be honored to attend when the time came. Then I set my phone face down, leaned back on my couch, and listened to the distant echo of fireworks outside. They thought they had erased me from this night, that they'd finally found a world high enough that I couldn't reach it. But the truth was, sitting right there on my laptop screen in a gold frame, my name stitched into the foundation of their shiny new life. The Crestwood flagship in San Diego looked exactly like the kind of place my parents fantasized about when they flipped through glossy magazines. Marble floors, towering palms, and oversized planters, the kind of floral arrangements that probably cost more than my first car. The night of the gala, the air was warm and humming with money. Staff in crisp uniforms moved like choreography, guiding guests toward the grand ballroom. I arrived early as requested, not as Jason's sister, but as one of the strategic partners. A coordinator handed me a badge with my name printed in clean black letters. Sophie Mitchell, Data and Growth Strategist. Inside the foyer, the wall of innovation stretched along one side, just like the mock-up. Gold frames, soft lighting, each case study telling a piece of the company's survival story. My frame sat near the center, my photo, my name, my work. Richard and Eleanor Thornton came over, all smiles and genuine warmth. They introduced me to board members, department heads, people whose livelihoods were tied to decisions I had helped shape. For the first hour, I forgot about my family entirely. I talked numbers and future plans and laughed at a CFO's joke about forecasting. I was in my element. Then I heard my mother's voice. It floated in from the lobby, high and nervous. "Oh, this place is... wow. Jason, look at that chandelier." I turned just enough to see them enter. My dad in a suit that suddenly looked cheaper under the chandeliers. My mom clutching a handbag like it might run away. Jason and Olivia walking ahead like they belonged there. My instinct was to shrink back, to move behind someone taller. But the staff had already been trained on who I was. One of them stepped forward, smiling at me. "Ms. Mitchell, can we get you near the wall? Mr. Thornton wants you close for the announcement." So instead of hiding, I found myself standing just a few feet from my own framed photo as my family crossed the foyer. They didn't see me at first. Their eyes were on the decor, the people, the promise of what this night meant for them. Eleanor gently tapped her champagne glass, calling for attention. Guests turned toward her, conversations softening to a hush. "Thank you all for being here," she began. "Tonight is about family and partnership, about the people who held this company up when things looked impossible." She gestured toward the wall. "Over the last year, we built this to remind ourselves that numbers are not just charts. They are people. People who changed everything when we needed it most." She stepped closer to my frame, smiling. "One of those people is someone very dear to us now." She pointed right at my photo. "This is Sophie Mitchell." My parents froze mid-sentence. Jason's head snapped toward the sound of my name. Eleanor read the plaque out loud. "Data and growth strategist, the mind behind the turnaround that kept these resorts alive when travel was at its worst." She turned, following the line from the frame to where I stood. Then her eyes went wide like she'd just solved a puzzle. "Sophie," she said, and then louder, full of delight. "Sophie Mitchell, you're here. You're Jason's sister." Head swiveled. Dozens of people turned to look at me, then at Jason, then at my parents. The silence that followed said more than any speech. Richard stepped up beside Eleanor, his gaze landing on my family with professional politeness that had just turned sharp. "You never told us your daughter was our Sophie," he said to my parents. David opened his mouth. Shut it. Looked like he wanted to melt into the marble. My mom stammered. We didn't realize you knew her like that. She does some kind of computer work. We didn't think it was, important for tonight." Richard's jaw tightened. "Important?" he repeated. "Without her, this party doesn't happen. This building doesn't stay this full. Half the people in this room would be updating their resumes." Eleanor laughed lightly, trying to soften the tension, but her words carried weight. "We've been bragging about her for months. I can't imagine hiding someone like Sophie." Jason's face went pale. He looked at me like I had betrayed him simply by existing. "Sophie," he said under his breath when he finally reached me. "You didn't tell me you were working with them." I held his gaze. "You didn't ask." Later, away from the crowd, my parents cornered me in a quiet hallway. My mom's voice shook. "You made us look like fools. We had no idea." I cut her off gently. "That I mattered to them? That my work mattered? Or that your embarrassing daughter became the person propping up your precious in-law's empire?" My dad tried to recover his authority. "You could have warned us, Sophie. We would have prepared differently." I almost laughed. "Prepared how? By inviting me this time? By pretending you were proud?" Jason stepped forward, eyes glassy. "Look, maybe we handled things wrong. But you know how Mom and Dad are. We just wanted everything to go smoothly. You do want to be part of this family, right?" That was the moment something inside me settled. I realized I'd spent years twisting myself into knots, chasing a version of belonging that always came with conditions. "I will always be your sister," I told Jason, "and I will always be their daughter. But I'm done begging to sit at a table where the price of admission is pretending I'm less than what I am. I'm not going to shrink anymore so you can appear bigger." My mom's eyes filled with tears. "Sophie, we were just afraid you'd embarrass us." I nodded. "And tonight, you found out the only thing embarrassing was how little you believed in me. That's on you, not on me." Back in the ballroom, when Richard introduced me on stage as a key partner, the applause felt different than any approval I had chased growing up. It wasn't polite clapping from relatives who barely listened. It was people who had seen the results and valued them. Standing there under that soft golden light, I understood something I wish someone had taught me years earlier. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't dramatic or cruel. It's choosing to stop handing your worth to people who only know how to discount it. If your family has ever made you feel like the embarrassing one, the one who needs to be hidden so they can look good, I want you to hear this. Their inability to see your value does not erase the value itself. You are allowed to build a life that honors who you are, even if that means creating distance from the people who taught you to doubt it. You are allowed to love them and still say no when their expectations crush you. In the end, my parents had to walk past that framed photo of me every time they moved through the resort that night, my name etched into the wall of the world they worshipped. They were the ones shrinking, avoiding eye contact, rehearsing apologies. I just kept walking, shoulders back, finally understanding that the real glow-up wasn't getting accepted by them. It was learning to accept myself first. And if you've ever been the one they tried to hide, I hope my story reminds you that you're not alone. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had to distance yourself from people who didn't see your worth. Maybe your story will be the thing that helps someone else finally stand up for theirs. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe to this channel. We share stories every week about people who refuse to let others define their value. And if you haven't already, hit that notification bell so you never miss another story of quiet strength turning into undeniable power. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I'll see